Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and delighted to have with us a special gentleman today, Josh Bernstein. He is a radio talk show host, one of our own. We like radio talk show hosts. Spokesman, he's a strategist, he's a writer, but he's very proud to be also the official spokesperson for the Association of Mature American Citizens, better known as AMAC, the legitimate alternative to AARP. I know thousands of people are dropping their AARP membership and going to AMAC, and that's a good thing. Hi, Josh. Good to see you, friend.
Great to be back with you.
Well, first of all, tell us about AMAC.
AMAC, again, as you said and pointed out, it's a wonderful organization, is the conservative alternative to groups like AARP. We put our members first, and anytime that we do something on behalf of Washington as far as lobbying and what have you, we make sure that it is for limited government, more choice in health care for seniors, they have better decisions, and that everything that we do is to make sure that the government is not the one that's dictating to seniors what they're going to do with their own bodies and their own health care. So I'm very, very proud to be part of AMAC and to be able to represent them.
And let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to AMAC, AMAC.us. That's the official website, AMAC.us, and you can get more information. And really, I get this question a lot, Josh. A lot of folks will ask me about AARP. I have a real short answer: get out. It's become a political arm of the left, as far as I'm concerned, and I send people over to AMAC, AMAC.us. Well, good to see you. We wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of subjects, and that the whole issue of racism and inequality. I'm sure you're talking about it on your talk show. Are you feeling now that we're back to the 60s with this racism issue?
Well, I think what's going on right now is just unbelievable. I mean, we are having mayors of large Democratic cities literally sanctioning violence, giving people, quote unquote, space to destroy. And it's unbelievable to think that they've allowed this to happen. We've got police arrests going way, way down because they're afraid of the consequences of doing their job. We've got violence on the streets. We've got murder and mayhem way up in all the big cities. And when you look at all these big cities and you look at Missouri and you look at Ohio and Cleveland, and you look at Baltimore and you look at Detroit, these are all cities that have been run and operated under liberal policies and by Democrats for some as many as 50 to 60 years. I mean, Detroit, for instance, has not had a Republican governor for 7 terms straight in a row. So the folks have to start thinking themselves, it's not the police, it's not the Republicans, it's not the war on poverty, it's not the $22 trillion thrown at helping these people. They've got to look internally at themselves and realize that maybe what they're doing, what they're voting for, and who they want to represent them is not the right answer, and there is an alternative.
I was shocked to hear not only what happened in these various cities that you mentioned, but the leadership of those communities say, oh, well, it's only a few businesses that were destroyed and we're able to bring it to a calm. I mean, breaking the law is breaking the law. At what point do we have no law?
Exactly. And I believe right now it's just anarchy and chaos. And it's unfortunate that, the police are taking the brunt of this. You've got all these slogans, hands up, don't shoot, and Black Lives Matter and things like that. But I say, what about police lives matter? They're targeting police. They're coming after police. And now that their 7-year-old kids are being shot, mothers that were, just got married in Baltimore just were shot and killed. And now they're saying, oh, well, maybe it's a good idea to bring the police back in. You can't have it both ways. And the police are not the bad guys here, okay? It's the policies, it's the procedures, it's liberalism, it's this latent despair and disdain, and this, I guess you could say, vitriol towards law enforcement. And I think this seething anger has boiled now to the surface to a point where not only is it dangerous, but now it's uncontainable. Before you had the police and you had the authorities being able to arrest people and to keep people in check and to keep people in line and law and order, and now they're afraid to do so because of some of the actions of the state attorney in Baltimore, the mayor in Baltimore, what they've seen in Ferguson. And let's not forget that these flames of anti-hatred and racism, if you will, have been brought upon by, I would say, the President of the United States, the First Lady, Reverend Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Malik Shabazz. All of these folks are out there doing what they can to incite this type of seething anger. And that's the dangerous part. It's not coming necessarily just from the people. It's being directed down from folks that shouldn't be doing it and that actually have the power in the community to get people to stop and to calm down. And they're not doing it. They're doing the opposite.
Well said, Josh. And then, of course, the other day, I don't know if our First Lady helps the situation in her address, talking about unaccommodating to minorities. I mean, that's just gas. Well, actually, what that is a grenade in the campfire.
You know, I had the pleasure and the opportunity to go on live national television last week and literally call out the First Lady of the United States on her racist comments, not only at the Tuskegee University in Alabama graduation ceremony, but more importantly at the Whitney Museum in New York. And what she said there was just unbelievable, basically saying that people that, are in the arts and culture and cultural centers and museums, that minorities cannot appreciate the finer things as far as art and things like that. And she said that they would not be appreciated in a place like this. And look, coming from the First Lady to say something like that, what if there's a Picasso out there? What if there's another Van Gogh? And now they hear the First Lady of the United States say something like that. It's not exactly going to give them that ringing, enthusiasm to try to, encapsulate on their beliefs and on their talents as an artist. And I think that that's a terrible thing. She could have used that opportunity to use maybe even herself as an example that you can rise above poverty.
I think we're tired of this one-way conversation sometimes with these folks. Let me ask you this, Josh. It all stems from a subject called inequality, and it seems that the media is talking about inequality, but I'm not sure if the citizenship of the country thinks that's an issue. I mean, is there really an inequality out there?
I don't believe there is. I mean, look, last time I checked, we do have an African-American president. To say that all white people are racist, we wouldn't have an African-American president, number one. Number two, you have to understand that the left needs victims in order to stay in power. And so what they do is they use divisiveness, they use identity politics to their advantage to keep people separated into different sects and groups. That way they can control them more. And so the message out there has to be that you can't provide for yourself, that you're the victim, and that you can't rise above your level of society, and therefore you need our help. And if you come along with us, all we ask is that you obey us and that you vote for us, and we'll take care of you. And we know that that's just not the case. And thankfully, a lot of people, all types of minorities, have risen above that. They've been able to see the lies of the left, and they understand that the only people in life that's really going to help themselves and support themselves are themselves. Okay? Government is there maybe to help out here and there, but it's not supposed to be there as a cradle to grave type of situation in which you depend on it. And I think that that's the problem. We've got too many people depending on it. We've got too many people inside the wagon and not enough people pulling it.
Aren't we like at 50% right now, 51% that are on some kind of government subsidy?
Well, look, there was a reason a couple of years ago in 2012 that Newt Gingrich called Barack Obama the food stamp president. There's over 50 million people on food stamps. You've got 94 million people not in the workforce, the most since 1976, I believe. You've got 56 million women not working. You've got probably 10 million people on disability because their 99 months of unemployment ran out. Look, it's a disaster. Look, when America's second largest job creator a few years ago is Kelly Temp Services, you know that can't be by accident. And that's the sad part. I believe that a lot of this has been done intentional to keep people, quote unquote, on the government plantation. And that's the society that the left, covets, and that's what they want. And we've got a chance here, in the next 2 years or so to pick a new leader. And look, we saw what Jimmy Carter brought us. It was Ronald Reagan. What is Barack Obama going to bring us? Well, hopefully someone similar to that.
All right. I wish I had you about 2 hours, but let me just wrap it up. As you talk to people on your talk show, and you obviously get around in the media very well, and you do some terrific writing. By the way, your own personal website is Josh Bernstein, politicalwriter.com.
That is correct, yeah. Or
Good.
you can just Google Josh Bernstein radio talk show host, and I'm pretty sure you'll find 5 or 6 pages full of information on that as well.
All right, as we go into this election cycle, Josh, what are you sensing to be the #1 issue that people are concerned about?
Well, obviously, I would say, you know, like Carville said, it's the economy, stupid. It's jobs, of course. But ultimately, I think that it's the overall social change and the structure of America that is taking place. And I think that if people really want to get back on track, I always say that the conservatives should rename themselves the Preservative Party. In other words, preserve everything that's good about America, our customs, our values, our morals, our Christian Judeo principles, all that good stuff. But ultimately, I think what they're going to need to do is you have to understand the Democrats have a very weak bench, okay? You've got a 67-year-old former First Lady with a horrific record as the Secretary of State. We've got someone who's a habitual liar and has obviously done many, many things to hide her money and her, you know, her ability to use the Clinton campaign initiative and all these different things that she's got, and destroying emails and 4 dead bodies in Benghazi. So for me, and I've said this in the past, I look at her as a completely flawed candidate. So now they have this O'Malley guy running into the race. He's younger, he's energetic, he plays the guitar. The last time the left fell in love with someone that played an instrument, that was Bill Clinton. So, look, I think that he's more than likely going to be their nominee. Now, on the Republican side, I mean, you know, you've got 900,000 people, it seems, at this point, running for president. There's a lot of rhinos in that race on our side, but there's also a couple of real good conservatives. So when the debates start, which to me is unbelievable, they're starting in August. But nonetheless, when the debates start and the people get to see them on the stage, on the big stage, and talking about the issues, hopefully a couple of those will start to rise to the top, and it'll weed out some of the rhinos. You know, I know Jeb Bush hasn't necessarily declared yet, but him and Lindsey Graham-Nasty, as I like to call him, and some of these others that are out there. And I think that, you know, your dark horse in this race, believe it or not, if he actually jumps in, is Donald Trump. And the reason I say that is because he's pretty conservative, number one, and number two, he doesn't need to go out and eat fried Twinkies in Iowa and hold babies. He doesn't need the name recognition. This is somebody that is the Donald, and therefore could spend as much money as he wanted to, run ads in all of Obama's 57 states, and get his message out there. Everybody knows who he is. So I think he's a true dark horse if he jumps into the race. But ultimately, I'm hoping that it's someone that keeps 2 things that are absolutes, in my opinion. Number one, the Second Amendment. Without the Second Amendment, you don't have any other amendments. Right. And number two, who's going to finally control and stop the flow of illegal immigration into this country? Those are the 2 main issues that I see.
Okay. Josh, you're a delight. Look forward to having you back often. You're a live wire. I like it, man.
Anytime you want, any subject, doesn't matter what it is. I don't need a teleprompter or any note cards.
You're the man. Thanks, Josh. And again, don't forget to go to amac.us, amac.us, and check out those services as well. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Welcome back, and delighted to have with us today Andy Braner. He's the founder of ABBA Ministries. It's a nonprofit youth ministry that teaches teens and college students to think about the world through a Jesus paradigm. And he's very successful at it. And the book that kind of encapsulates what he does is called No Fear in Love. You may want to check that out, No Fear in Love. There's a picture of it there on the screen. Check it out at the bookstores. And so, Andy, what a delight to have you. How you doing, friend?
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it a ton.
Thank you. You know, by the way, you've been on CBN, Fox News, and various other medias. Now you've made it to the big time. You're on the Dove TV network.
Big time, man. Big time. Thank you, guys. I've arrived.
All right. Hey, listen, thanks for being with us. Tell us about your book, No Fear in Love. How did you select that title?
Yeah, great question. The last book that I wrote is called Alone, and what I did, I went around the country and I researched with high school students and university students to figure out what is the biggest issue that students are dealing with. And I found that that the real issue is not about sex, it's not about drugs, it's not about rock and roll, it's about loneliness. And this plague of loneliness that has affected our students just sort of led me into this environment where I started seeing this lonely plague where students were like disassociating themselves from each other because of and in conjunction with the fear that they had to relate to one another. So my idea was, I wonder how much fear really dictates how we think, how we operate, and especially in Christian communities, how we see God working in the world today.
That is fascinating. You know, it's often we do a lot of counseling shows, and I would say loneliness is at the top of the list as well in some form or fashion. And yet we live in this connected age with all of these devices. How do we become isolated?
Right. So I was teaching at this school in Atlanta, and it was a Christian school, small Christian school, and they had a high-level senior class. And as the students walked in, I kind of picked one or two of them that I thought looked like the popular kids, and I thought, I'm going to ask them some questions about how they work online. And so I was asking this one kid, I said, how many friends do you have on Facebook? And this is a couple years ago. Now students don't do Facebook because their mom is on Facebook. But I said, how many friends do you have on Facebook? And he said, I've got 1,200 friends on Facebook. And I thought, wow, I mean, like, man, you're really popular. And I said, of those 1,200 friends, how many of them, if they called you right now and you saw their name pop up on your phone, how many of them would you actually answer the phone, put the phone to your ear and talk to them? And he said maybe 20, you know, and I was like, wow. How do you go from 1,200 to 20 so fast? And he said, well, you know, I'd text them back or I'd message them back and I'd get back with them. I said, okay. I said, all right, so if you had 1,200 friends on Facebook, 20 that you'd actually talk to, how many of those 20 would actually know you so well that when something happened in your life that was really painful, they'd show up to your house and they'd sit with you and they'd just be with you unsolicited? And he thought for about 30 seconds and he said, maybe 2. Whoa. And I said, congratulations, that's 200% more than most of us. So the point of the story is we need to take inventory of our online life and see, has this elusive connectivity of friends and likes and tweets and retweets really become something that gives us this illusion of connectedness, but really we don't know each other?
You know, that adds to something I've said often, Andy, and that is that whatever, if it's a text or an email or a tweet, it's read and accepted with an emotion that's different than the emotion from which it was written.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So
you're receiving it based upon where you're at, not from where the person is sending it. So how deceiving is that?
Right. that parlays straight into what my message about fear is, because when we interpret that message, that text or that email or that Facebook message or that retweet, and all of a sudden we take it different than the sender intended it on being, sometimes we can lace that message with a bit of skepticism, criticism, pessimism, and then all of a sudden we sort of back up into this separation and we go, oh, do I need to protect myself? What if they're coming after me? What if they're posturing? What if they're maneuvering? How do I respond to this? And so loneliness and fear kind of work in tandem as this dynamic tension together.
So I've often said on this show, whatever God saves you from or brings you through, he turns you around, makes you a minister to. Not knowing this, did you suffer with fear?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The most fearful place in my Christian walk was in 9/11. When 9/11 happened, I was right in the middle of building a ministry to help students understand Christian worldview, apologetics, know the right answers, defend your faith. And I felt like when I stood in front of my television on that day, I thought, oh my gosh, we have to arm up our people to go and fight. And so I took all of my research and I started developing curriculum where Christians could go out and stand up for what's right in the face of the adversity that was to come. Specifically in that day, obviously, it was in this radical Islam movement. And so as I started doing that and I started giving students answers, it was out of my own fear that led me to places that were, as I was giving students answers, they'd go and they'd really kind of pick fights. And they started going to their atheist friends, their Buddhist friends, their Muslim friends, and they started saying, you're wrong and I'm right. And I started getting calls from communities all over the country that said, what are you doing up there? You're training kids to be Christian jerks. And I had to sit back and go, wait a second, has my fear led me to a place that knowledge is the most important thing and logic is the most important thing apart from loving other people? And so I had to take a few months back and start thinking, how can I develop friendships with people that I most fear? And so the book tells stories of, specifically in the Muslim world, where I go to head of mosques in Boston, head of Muslim communities in the Middle East, and I work quite a bit in the Middle East, and try to develop connections and friendships that overcome fear, where we can have real conversations about what we believe and why we believe what we believe.
And that ultimately leads to what you do, and that is you try to teach people how to treat people through the eyes, or at least through a Jesus paradigm, right? So you take Jesus, so to speak, out of religion and Christianity and put him in a different box, so to speak.
That's exactly what I'm doing, is trying to figure out how do we take the framework of what we kind of know is a Christian tradition and juxtapose that to maybe what Jesus was doing and find the common places where we can say, oh yeah, this is exactly what Jesus was doing here, and then find the places of dissent where we go, you know what, this thing is more tradition than maybe what Jesus set out to give us.
How's the response?
It's been unbelievable. We started inviting students up to our summer camp program in Durango, Colorado called Kivu. And we started inviting students from the Middle East here. And so now we have American Christians, we have Middle Eastern Muslims, we have Israeli Jews, we have atheists, we have agnostics, we have Buddhists that are all coming around knowing that we're having a conversation about Jesus, okay? So that's the center. And so as we come around the table, we say, all right, well, let's talk about the differences. Let's talk about what is the difference between the message that we feel like Jesus came to tell us and the message that you're living. And we've had nearly 120 Middle Eastern Muslims come out here to Colorado and have these compelling conversations. It's unbelievable what's happening.
How do you separate your conversation from evil? Because I know the evil produces its own fear, and rightfully so. It's a two-sided fear. It's fear of what it can do to you and the fear of respect. But how do you keep evil from creeping in, yet it's very real?
You know what we decided? We decided we were going to have like-minded people come to our place. And so they're not the quote-unquote evil people to begin with. And we said, let's just test this and let's see what happens. And so what we did was we couched this conversation in the context of summer camp, where we do whitewater rafting, mountain biking, hiking, jet skiing, boating, rock climbing, all these outdoor things, okay, that everybody kind of has fun doing. And so we start the conversation in the beginning about relationship. Let's go up to the lake and let's jet ski together. And as we jet ski, what I found was that I don't care what you believe, every 15-year-old boy gets on the back of a jet ski and is smiling and having a good time. And so as they develop friendship, we come back to our base camp and we start having conversations about the similarities and differences of our belief system. And when it gets hard, and we welcome the hardness, okay? We're not a people that are about, let's just sing Kumbaya and get on with our lives. We like to talk about commonalities, but we want to talk about differences too. And so when the differences get in tension and we can kind of feel that fear and protectionism start rising up, then we go rock climb. And then we come back, and then we go mountain bike, and then we come back, and then we go back to jet ski, and then we come back. And as we're developing relationships with people, we're getting a chance to dispel the fear of the other based on whatever it is, skin color, religious affiliation, whatever cultural work that's different. And we get a chance to say, you know what? This person in front of me is human. I'm a human. we want about the same things. Now let's see what happens when we introduce Jesus to this conversation and see where God takes it.
So it is evangelism.
Yeah, in the broadest sense of the word.
I mean, you do have an agenda here.
Well, my agenda is to talk about Jesus, and then from there, it's for God to do what God does.
Okay.
I'm not about racking up numbers. I don't have a list. I don't have a report that I send to donors to say this is what we're doing. I kind of said, I'm going to let God do God's job. And when people ask me, how many people got saved or how many people got baptized or all that, that's up to God. I know a lot of Christian kids who come here who say they get saved, and then at the end of the day, 5 years later, 10 years later, their life really doesn't look like what they said it would look like here. So I kind of divorced our program from that kind of thinking and just said, let's talk about Jesus. Jesus said, come and follow me. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus said, go and make disciples or followers of me. And so we're going to adopt that as literal as we can. And then, like I said, let God do what God does best in the rest of it.
You're refreshing. This is good. I'm going to get you back to be a part of our panels, because I think this is the approach we need to look at. I think we're approaching too much stuff from fear, and most of our fear is the unknown, So great approach. The book is entitled No Fear in Love. You may want to check it out. There's a picture there on the screen. And if you want to get through to Andy and learn more about his ministry and what he's doing, Andy Braner, BRANER.com. Check it out.
That's it. Thanks, Perry. I really appreciate your time.
All right, blessings on you, friends. See you next time. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back, and delighted having in the studio with us today a couple of gentlemen who are doing a special series on Southern Oregon Public Television, and I'm delighted to partner with them on this. It's a series entitled My Story of Service, and Jeff LeBeau, and then we have Andy.
Yes,
Draper.
Andy Draper.
How you doing, Jeff? Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
How are you, Andy?
Good today.
Thanks for coming in, guys.
On.
Yeah, this is pretty fascinating. You're the producer. Mm-hmm. How did all this come about? Why are you doing this?
Well, that's two different questions.
Okay.
But how it all came about was it kind of organically grew up. Back, I think it was about 2006, Ken Burns did a series, World War II. And at the time, we did a series of records of local World War II veterans that were kind of put in the archive. And I kind of came across them and discovered that almost every one of these fine gentlemen had passed on just in the 6-7 years. And I was talking with Andy and another a volunteer that, boy, it'd be really interesting to start archiving these personal stories,
right.
Get a social history directly from the men and women who have served our country. Mm-hmm. And just serendipitously, it dovetailed into another upcoming PBS Ken Burns special on Vietnam. And so there's just been, and we floated the idea with a couple of our underwriters, got really excited. This has been the biggest groundswell of support that we've had as a station in our 38 years.
Wow.
Andy was instrumental in helping me get out and start to meet the veterans and figure out how to actually get these guys in the studio and talk to them.
Well, Andy, what are some of the highlights we're going to see through this series?
There's a group of local veterans who are going to be just telling their points of view on their service and their take from what happened. And I've watched a couple of them, but a lot of it kind of draws you in on a personal aspect. Yeah. And I think that's what people are going to be really interested in to see just the humanity that's there and what their neighbors probably went through that they don't normally talk about. Right. So it does get those stories out of the 2% that serve.
Of course, you guys are producers, and those of us who are in front of the camera and you guys who are normally behind the camera, when you do a story like this and do a series of stories, every time I interview a veteran, and I've had the opportunity just a couple of weeks ago to interview some people that made it through Auschwitz and things like that, you're changed by it. You personally get more involved in this. It's more than just producing a series and making it look good on television. All of a sudden you realize these are real people. It really did happen. And were you guys impacted like that at that level?
Oh yeah, certainly. Some of these stories are, as Andy was saying, are very personal. And there's reference to events, the signing of treaties, battles that I've learned about in history, but to hear it from an individual's, and they have a very different, as in one of the vet says, who's struggling with PTSD now, and he recalls one of the event that kind of set him off was how everyone's experience is completely different and personal, and you can't just stamp say, oh, this is what a vet is and this is their experience. Everyone's life is a individual path across the mountain.
No question about it. Andy, or either one, Andy or Jeff, did you find it hard for them to share their story? In other words, they were struggling to get it out because most people, especially those who do suffer from PTSD, internalize, and that's part of the process that they're going through to get their healing, but they really don't want to talk about it.
I think there's a lot of reservation in sharing who you are and what you've been through for a couple of reasons. One of them is people think it's not interesting to other people. And then they believe that they're going to relive that, and sometimes those feelings come back up and you don't want to relive those things that took you to bad places. So that's the difficulty there. We've been fortunate enough to have some vets who have come to terms with that, and the public treatment of people as they talk about the things that they went through and what went on over there. There's always some skepticism of how people are going to take that and how they're going to view you after that.
That's something I wanted to just ask both of you to respond to, especially the Vietnam vet. They not only struggle with, they want to put it behind them, but they struggle with, it wasn't a popular thing to do, so why bring all that back up again? Did you sense that in some of these stories?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it wasn't
more than one vet recounted what it was like returning and the decision to not let people know. Some Vietnam vets who shared that and said their solution would not let people know because they were saying, oh, being called a baby killer, and they knew they weren't. Their feelings about the war had evolved. They know they weren't as portrayed by the public, and they decided, like, okay, I'm not gonna, I won't let people know that I actually, but then you have other wars. That's what's been interesting about this, is that all of the different, unfortunately we've been in many wars.
Time too.
Yeah, and how they've been treated and why they got in, but they all share. I found it really interesting. They all share certain traits, at least coming out. They almost, bar none, still want to answer the call of service, even after returning. Even after when they're down on their luck or struggling, they still feel that call.
Well, anyway, when's the series going to run, guys? When's this going to happen?
The first series premieres June 8th at 9 o'clock after Antiques Roadshow, and runs 16 weeks.
16 weeks. All right, so June 8th, PBS, and starts at what time?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. So there's a little bit on the screen there. It shows you a little bit about
great.
it. I just want to encourage people. Look, it's odd that I would tell you to watch another television station.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
But I really think that we need to understand these people who are living among us and the struggles that they went through, and maybe what they're still dealing with, and to bring back to us a level of appreciation of the price that was paid for us to be an American. You know, I was working for KCRA Channel 3 in Sacramento at the time of during the Vietnam War. And I was assigned to go to Travis Air Force Base. I'll never forget this. It's forever in my mind. And I covered one of the first airplane loads of vets coming back from Vietnam, landing there at Travis Air Force Base. Still gets to me thinking about it. They came off the plane, and the moment their feet hit the soil, they leaned down and kissed the ground, only to get in a car and go outside Travis Air Force Base and to be spat upon. And so the dichotomy of that moment, I'll just never forget it. And yet, now they're suffering with PTSD and all of these other things. I just want to commend you both for taking this on, and especially highlighting people in our own backyard. You know?
Well, as the local public television station, it kind of feels like it's one of our responsibilities.
Well, thank you for doing it.
Well, we appreciate it.
And Andy, thank you for coming in. I guess we're going to keep you a little bit, Jeff, and bring in another Jeff and have him tell his story. He is a vet, right?
Yeah, and Jeff Tablor, he was one of the veterans that we spoke to, and he's in our series, and he has quite a story.
How many people did you end up interviewing through the whole thing?
Well, interviewed 24 people, 14 made it into a show, okay. Not because the other 10 didn't have fascinating stories, lack of time. Honestly, a few of the vets that haven't made a show yet, their stories were so complicated that trying to tell it in a 24-minute, I've yet to figure out how to do it.
Okay. And that just underscores the issue, that their lives are so complicated. Yeah. Well, thank you both. Let me take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Jeff Tablor, and he is a Vietnam vet, and to share his story. So stick around.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and delighted to have in the studio with us Jeff LeBeau. He's the producer of the Southern Oregon Public Television special series coming up starting this coming Monday. It's called My Story of Service, and in the studio with us now is Jeff Tablor, and he is a Vietnam vet, and we're going to talk to him about his story. But let me tell you, this special series will start next Monday at 9 o'clock in the evening after the Antique Roadshow, which, by the way, I love watching once in a while.
We all love watching.
I'm surprised what may be in my attic.
Yeah, you could have your retirement set.
It could be sitting up there in a box. I don't know. But anyway, we don't do this very often. This is very unusual for one television station to plug another. But I am so proud of what they've done to bring to the surface the series of veterans and their stories. And it'll start next Monday on Southern Oregon Television, starting at 9 o'clock. And it'll run for how many weeks?
16 weeks.
16 weeks, Jeff? Okay. Jeff Tablor, nice to see you, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, and you're a Vietnam vet.
Yes, sir.
So what rank and what branch and how long?
Well, I was in Vietnam for a year during the Tet Offensive. I was a Specialist 5 or Sergeant, if you want to refer to that. And I was there a year, and I was in the service a year, 2 years and 10 months, and 21 days and a few hours.
You calculated that down.
Right.
First of all, thank you for your service. you and I are probably pretty close in age, because I was being drafted and didn't pass. And a lot of my friends on that bus got drafted and immediately went in. I came back and tried to even volunteer in the Air Corps because I was a pilot. But I've been to the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. on several occasions. I've taken a piece of paper and I've held it up and I've etched with pencils some names of friends and colleagues. An incredible time. And as I told Jeff earlier, the thing that I'll never forget is when the first load came home from Vietnam to Travis Air Force Base. They got off the plane and kissed the ground, got in a car, and outside the base they were spat upon.
Yeah.
So, tell us your story.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be, didn't receive any spit, but I did kiss the ground when I got back. And when I came back from Vietnam, I was transferred to Atlanta, Georgia, Fort McPherson, where I ended up being discharged from to civilian life. But I was in Vietnam. I worked with the 29th Civil Affairs Group, based out of Da Nang. And they worked with the Marines who helped the people of Vietnam rebuild their homes after they were destroyed by either the enemy or us. I was also stationed up by the DMZ with the Marines and worked up there, and that's where I got to work with firsthand with the people up there, which was very, very interesting to learn how they felt about us, how they lived. They didn't want us there, of course, and I didn't blame them. We moved things out of the DMZ into South Vietnam when we destroyed things, helped them rebuild their homes. And we had an interpreter. I told Jeff this story. We had an interpreter who was helping us, a kid about 16 years old, because we needed somebody to speak the language. And one day he didn't show up. And I thought, well, he's probably sick. You know, they don't call in. So a few days later, I found out that he was arrested. He was a spy. He was a North Vietnamese. I have no idea what happened to him to this day, sadly.
Did you know what your mission was?
Over there? Yeah, I was told.
But your group, your battalion, obviously had a mission.
Right.
Did you understand the big mission?
I really didn't.
Okay.
I didn't understand why we were there.
Okay.
You know, we followed the French there, who were occupied and didn't succeed in getting anything done, and so then it was our turn. And and who's going to follow us, you know, type of thing. You know, I really didn't. It was really a sad thing to see. A lot of the guys didn't.
You saw a frontline battle?
Not really, but really. I mean, we were there. We were hit by mortars. We were shot upon. You know, it was a daily thing when I was up by the DMZ.
I want to ask you a couple questions. You don't feel comfortable answering them.
Go ahead.
Okay. Do you have flashbacks?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
But you have processed it. And how you doing?
Okay, I'm doing okay. I'm doing better than a lot of guys did.
Yeah.
But what's happened to me is I've now have Parkinson's. And I was around Agent Orange in Vietnam. And so it made me think more now that I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's. I reflect back, I think, oh.
Are they able to connect that dot?
Yeah.
They are. So
They
that
are.
Agent Orange and Parkinson's, that dot was connected?
Yep.
So the Veterans Affairs taking care of you?
Yes.
And you're okay with that now?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not okay with Parkinson's,
No,
but
but we're hearing the horror stories about Veterans Affairs right now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I'll have to say that they have been very good to me.
Good.
Yeah. They sent me to a specialist in Portland a couple of times and checked me out here. And so, yes.
Is that common among your colleagues that were exposed to Agent Orange?
Yes, Parkinson's and cancer. Yeah, my brother-in-law has cancer, and he was there.
Jeff, this Jeff.
Yes,
Two Jeffs in
there's
here.
two Jeffs.
What am I missing in his story that we're going to hear?
Well, I don't want to tell you all of his stuff, but I think he downplayed a little bit about, you asked him if he was in battle, and he says that he got mortared, but he was face to face with the aftermath, the death, as I think you called it. There's a certain slosh to body parts
Carrying body bags.
In a body bag when a whole body's not there.
We were there for Tet Offensive, which was quite challenging and scary.
One thing I have heard common from other Vietnam vets is that there was a smell of war that you can think about and still smell it. Do you experience that?
Yeah, there was a smell of war while I was there, and it just sort of stayed with you afterwards. You talk about being spit on when you came back. People didn't really accept you when you came back. You know, and a lot of guys took to drinking immediately, and just partied all the time, and tried to forget. It was tough. I was one of them, I have to admit. Yeah.
Okay. I can't imagine how you were trying to process that. I mean, here you are over defending freedom and liberty, and you come home and you're not accepted for what you did. I can't process in my brain what you must have been emotionally trying to deal with. You did what you were called to do, but you weren't appreciated for it.
Right.
How are you now on that issue?
I don't think we should have ever been there.
Okay.
I think it was a senseless war that shouldn't have never happened. And it just blows my mind now to see what's going on in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tourist trap. And you probably, some of the clothes you buy are made in Vietnam. So it's amazing to me the things that have just changed, how they changed. And I don't know if it's for the better or not.
These vets are just ultimately cogs in often, unfortunately, a political wheel.
Yeah.
They write a blank check to the United States up to and including their life, and they'll do what they're called upon. But a lot of them afterwards, in my conversations with them, do reflect on. I'm not quite sure why we did that or why we were there. A couple other vets now are devout, non-aggressive, no anti-war. Going in, they were very pro. Coming out, having actually gone through the experience.
Right, exactly.
Go, well, totally I don't think this ever will work. But everyone has a different point of view, and that's why we did this series.
All right, let me just say to our viewers and listeners, it's a special series that will start on the 8th, which is a Monday, right after Antique Roadshow on public television. So I'm plugging another TV station. But look,
we appreciate you doing it, Barry.
I believe in what they're doing here, and I think that I want our veterans to know, especially our audience, to go and hear more stories and see this, because I think as frustrating as the world's become, we just kind of push it away over here. You know, it's there, it happened, so what? But we need, you folks are still living it. Anyway, it starts Monday night at 9 o'clock, and it'll go for quite a few weeks, these series. And how many episodes you have there?
There's 8 episodes.
8 episodes.
And repeated twice, yeah.
And they're going to repeat it twice. In closing, I only got about a minute left, but let me ask you this, Jeff. You mentioned during the break of how many families that are still involved in the military, and yet we don't know that.
Yeah,
or they're losing
one of the reasons, one of the first questions you asked me was why we did this. One of the reasons I was really interested is that when I was coming up and growing up in the 60s, every family, and you knew families that had veterans, military connections. But now, with the civilian population, it's becoming a smaller and smaller percent. I hear anything between 1% and 2%. And there's beginning a disconnect between the veterans and what they really experience that we used to find out from our family members. Now we don't. And that's one of the reasons we want to do the show, is allow people to really get to know some veterans.
We have a lot of families that have no military connection whatsoever, and therefore that legacy is passed on. And now we have our third president that didn't serve in the military. You know, so we got this big gap going on here. So, hey, thank you guys both for being a part of it. Jeff, thank you for your service. Thank you, Jeff, for what you're doing. And let's stay in touch. I'd be glad to see how this thing turns out for you. And keep up the good work. Do some more of this stuff, okay?
Thank you.
All right,
you too.
We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.